Welcome to Central News, I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, employment has been on the rise in the last 10 years in the Bay of Plenty, but the average wage is lagging behind compared to other regions. The Tauranga Port's success has had a major impact on the rise in employment, but the Bay of Plenty still has a high unemployment rate. Western Bay of Plenty Regional Economic Growth Development Business Priority 1's Chief Executive Andrew Cocker says the region's unemployment rate has been affected by the PSA disease. Andrew says the region's average wage is lagging as our main employment is in the traditionally lesser paid horticulture and manufacturing sectors. But despite this, Tauranga is no longer $10 Tauranga.
Not at all. If you talk to our key industry sectors here, you know, the freight and logistics, the IT sector, specialised manufacturing, health, they don't get away with paying below industry rates. So we have to compete against other cities and regions, and of course those sectors pay accordingly and increasingly.
A national management plan for dealing with kiwifruit vine disease, PSAV, announced on Monday by the government, is being welcomed by New Zealand Kiwifruit Growers Incorporated. Primary Industries Minister Nathan Guy announced the national PSAV pest management plan has been formally approved by the government. The plan includes introducing a levy rate on exported kiwifruit to help cover disease management, monitoring plant material movement, and dealing with unmanaged and abandoned orchards. The levy, voted on by growers, will have a shortfall until yields return to pre-PSA levels. As a result, Cabinet has agreed that $3.5 million remaining from initial government funding for PSAV of $25 million will be passed to Kiwifruit Vine Health to implement the plan. Stall holders at the cargo shed are seeking to take over the lease of the shed directly from council in a bid to stay as managing body. Creative Tauranga looks to take the shed in a new direction. Key holders presented a submission to Tauranga City Council requesting to lease the waterfront shed directly from the council. It was requested they be allowed to stay in the premises for the month of June, while they formulate a submission outlining full projected cash flow and plans for the shed. The request comes after current leaseholder Creative Tauranga issued letters of notice to stall holders on April 17th, giving them until May 31st to vacate the shed. Now for our region's weather, Hamilton, your Friday will have periods of rain developing throughout the day. Your expected high is 19 and an overnight low of 11. Tauranga, rain developing and a northerly breeze. Your expected high is 19 and an overnight low of 14. Just ahead, a community taking on their own initiative. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. The Tauranga suburb of Maryvale has always had a bit of a bad rap, but some of the residents, along with the community centre, are hoping their new idea will help make the place safer for children and build the community spirit. John, there was a weekend of events that actually led to this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we had a few parties that went on, and we had two fairly major assaults and a sexual assault up on the school field. It was all of those three occurring at one time over one weekend that caused us to want to do something about it.
Lana, who actually instigated the curfew?
Been myself and another parent of ours that have been living in the community for ages, and we have a lot in common, both of us, and I think all of us do, and that's our kids, the safety of our kids in the street, and we have the community itself and the people that actually live here. You know, so we want to keep it safe for our babies.
What is the curfew?
The idea of a curfew was that it would be good to have kids that are too young to be out late, not wandering the streets. And so the idea of a curfew came up at the first community meeting as a possible solution to that. And it would be great if we could have kids off the street at a sensible time and home with their parents, but obviously that takes a little while to organise, and it's not an easy thing to organise. So that's what these meetings are about. They're about talking about how we do that and how we achieve that in a safe way for people.
So the police won't actually be able to enforce the curfew. Are they actually supporting it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the police are really supportive of any community initiative when members of the community come together and say we want to do something about issues. So the police have been to the meetings, and they were at the centre just 20 minutes ago talking about it as well. So it's they're keen to be part of what's going on.
Who will enforce the curfew then?
Well, again, that's not something that I can answer, and no one's really going to enforce the curfew because we can't drag kids off the street or take kids home. But I think in a community where people know each other and people know each other's kids, and that's the sort of community this is, if you know those kids, then you can be going up to them and saying, hey, what are you still doing out? Why are you out? Maybe we should go home. And if those kids know that person and that person knows those kids, then there's nothing to stop, them being taken home and going back home.
What will happen if one of these neighbourhood groups actually takes home a child and the parents aren't there or the parents don't care?
In the case, if there are cases where kids are consistently out and there's no one at home or people at home are not able to care for those kids, then that actually becomes a care and protection issue. And in that case, certainly as far as the community centre is concerned, we would be involving care and protection agency and teams.
Alcohol does seem to be one of these underlying problems. Are you trying to work with the people that sell alcohol?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The local bottle store just over the road is, I met with them last week to start talking about these issues, and they seem open to, wanting to do something about it. And I believe that they never knowingly sell alcohol to young people. But maybe we've got to do some work about identifying the people that do buy it for young people, and ask the alcohol store to not serve them. And I think and I think they'd perhaps be worth to, they'd be happy to consider that sort of thing. They've said to us that they'd be happy to look at closing when the school comes out, so that there's not sort of people around buying alcohol when the school comes out. So we're pretty happy that they want to be part of the community as well, and they want to play a positive role if they can. Obviously that's a challenge because there's a lot of problems to do with alcohol in this community, and that comes back with our community meeting to challenging people in this community to think about how they use alcohol, what sort of messages their alcohol use gives to their children, and their tolerance for having parties in the garage and kids getting hold of that alcohol. So we need to be having those conversations and starting to challenge people in that way, I think.
Why does Maryvale have such a bad rap?
Well, Maryvale has a bad rap in part because it's portrayed in that way in the media.
Yep.
And I have to say that there's a tone of racism in there. But really it's about, it's an issue around poverty. And Maryvale is one of the highest areas of poverty in Tauranga. And people are struggling to get by. And there are a whole lot of issues that occur with that. In my opinion, the problem we've got is that the gap between those that are most well off in our society and least well off is getting wider.
Yeah.
And as long as that gap gets wider, we're going to have problems in communities like this, and there'll be problems with alcohol and safety and all those things. So until we actually address that, we continue to have these situations.
Lana, why do you think Maryvale has such a bad rap?
It's a lot of the comments are coming from people that have lived here. Okay, they've had a bad stint since they were here. Okay, but it doesn't happen on an everyday occasion. People need to come here, live here, and live with the people, and find out for themselves before you actually make judgment.
I mean, I have to say, in my time working here, that Maryvale has been, Maryvale's a community in the old sense of the word community, where people do know each other, people do look out for each other, and there's some pretty bad stuff that happens here as well. But people know each other here, and people look out for each other, and people are friendly and open.
Coming up next, local government reform and the South Waikato District. Welcome back. Here is the Mayor of the South Waikato District, Neil Sinclair, on local government reform. Do you think it's the responsibility of your council to see NCA past results?
I'd have to, it's taken me all my time not to burst out laughing over that. I suppose you'd like me to make quite certain whether I should check the health and welfare of every man in my district with prostate. I mean, that's the same sort of silly nonsense. That's the role of the Education Department. But I have a role at the schools. I attend every school prize giving. I attend all the high achiever things at the high schools to encourage education. I'm working right now with the University of Waikato and Wairiki and the schools to have an education hub. That's my role. It's not my role to be a school teacher.
What about greenhouse gases?
Greenhouse gases, I think we touched when we talked about environmental areas there, that we have to do it. Greenhouse gases, I'm not too sure whether we mean that in terms of climate change, and I'm a member of the Mayors for Climate Change, but we do recognise within Tokoroa we have an air pollution problem and we have to come through and face that. Now that's a health issue that Council has a responsibility to create a sustainable, good, clean environment for people on a general global type area, but I don't get into wandering around in terms of greenhouse gases and starting to sticking my finger in areas that have nothing to do with me. We aren't God.
What about child abuse?
Oh, child abuse, in which I'm there, we're part of our police and they're working there, and we do it so we can give all the support we can, but the support I now give there, does that go counter to the government's local government reforms? Because it says no longer do I have an interest in the social well-being of my community. But I do, and therefore when we have the police come along and give us the child abuse figures and we say, right, how can I support TCOS, Men Against Violence and these groups to make my community better when the government said keep your fingers out of social areas? Bit of a dichotomy there, and I don't know what they want us to do. Unfortunately, at my age, I'll do what I think's best for my community, and if the government have to send me to jail, well, that's just the way it'll be.
The new policy statement is providing good quality local infrastructure, public services and regulatory functions at the least possible cost to households and businesses. Will this actually make a difference to how you govern?
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I don't know either, because the big change that now I have to look after businesses and households. Does this mean that I don't care for my residents and my ratepayers and the children in there? Because where do the children fit in here? Where do those coming forward? Where does youth unemployment? Where does the Mayor's task force fit within this? Is this a direction from a business-orientated government saying the most important thing are the businesses rather than the people? I will leave this job as a people's mayor.
Do you think councils should have caps on their spending enforced by central government?
On what areas? Would you say we should only spend so much on roads, or we should only spend so much on sewerage, or we should only spend so much on water? What does that cap in spending mean? We have to be fiscally responsible. We have to put out a financial statement, as we do in our annual plan, and say this is where we're spending it to. The community decides what we should be doing. And if the community decides that South Waikato Council, this is what you should be doing and spending on, that's their duty. Why does Big Brother want to come in and tell the community, we know best? I'm sorry, I don't adhere to the idea that Wellington knows best for the South Waikato. South Waikato knows best. And if I spend wrongly, they will throw me out and I'll say, well, okay, I've done my best.
Should councillors and council staff be held more accountable if decisions made by them actually result in public loss?
I'd love it, if that takes place, can we move it on to the government as well? I mean, gosh, Nova Pay would mean all sorts of things if you actually took that policy further on. I think that would be a wonderful idea. I'm accountable every 3 years. And so, and I can think of areas in which people are saying council has done wrong there and spent that money wrongly there and that. But usually it's because we get advice from the experts and coming in there and it's balanced it up. And by the time you try to trace it back, as long as decisions are made with the best advice available at the time, made with good intentions, made without any hint of stupidity, but they are done with that. That's the best we can do. But there are going to be times in which you have to become accountable, and I can think in my own council there are areas in which decisions and things have come back to bite us, and I've had to say, why has that taken place? If it's staff, it gets written on their employment records. If it's councillors, you have to then take it as a... I believe in a corporate council structure so that we make a decision. We've just debated it, and that we've got some cases coming up to the High Court right now, which are distressing and annoying, and it shouldn't be taking place. But who, what, we have to wait and see what takes place. Accountability takes place every 3 years.
Just ahead, a local rock star. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. The month of May is New Zealand Music Month, so the Central News team thought we would get out there and meet some of the local musicians our region has to offer. Tonight, we meet with a Tauranga local whose band is touring the UK.
It's very exciting. It's something that's been on our bucket list for ever since we formed Brillo, really, back in 1999. It's very exciting because we get to play to our target audience. And that's play British rhythm and blues in Britain. So to their audiences, they know what it is. They are very well aware of exactly how it should be and what's acceptable and what's not. So we're very excited to be taking our New Zealand version of that rhythm and blues to them in England.
How would you describe British rhythm and blues?
British rhythm and blues, well, it's quite a long story really, but I guess back in the late 50s, early 1960s, when black American blues started making its way across the Atlantic to England, and these British kids got hold of this music, and they just fell in love with it. And what they wanted to play it really badly, and they did. They played it really badly. But it's their interpretation of that American blues is what created the genre of British rhythm and blues, and that became very famous because the British exported it back across the Atlantic there, back to America in the form of the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Yardbirds, the Pretty Things, all of that early British beat music was classed as British rhythm and blues. Manfred Mann, all sorts of bands, very famous.
What is your fan base like in New Zealand?
We have a good fan base as far as New Zealand bands are concerned. We play at lots of festivals all over the country. But it's not a huge fan base, but we are very popular everywhere we go. We've surprised a lot of people at all the festivals because our music is unconventional compared to what they're normally used to hearing and seeing, which is American version of the blues.
Do you have quite a large fan base in the UK?
No, but ask me in October, after we come back from our tour in October.
And you actually have quite an interesting story in how you got into music.
I do, but there are quite a number of them, really. Perhaps the most interesting one is that when I was born in the UK, and my family moved into a council house, and the family vacating that house were emigrating to New Zealand. Their son became New Zealand's top recording artist, possibly of all time. His name's Shane, and he had a great hit with a song called St. Paul, amongst another number of other hit songs. And anyway, so I moved into his bedroom. I was about less than a year old. Shane was about 10, 8 or 10. They emigrated to New Zealand. 10 years later, my family emigrated to New Zealand, and I became a singer. And it's almost following in Shane's footsteps, really. It's quite an interesting. Because
you actually taught yourself the harmonica, and you taught yourself the harmonica.
I did, yes. My grandfather played the harmonica, and so I knew what it was, But when I first started playing music, the guys in my band put up a song for me to learn. They said, let's learn this song, it's really cool, everybody likes it. I said, we can't do that, it's got harmonica in it. And I thought, well, let me find out, I'll see if I can play it, it sounds pretty easy. So I went to the local music shop and I asked the guy what it was I needed to play it, and I learnt to play that song. And the songs progressively got more and more complex as the years went on.
What is a theremin?
A theremin is the early interpretation of what was to become the synthesizer. It was invented in the 1920s by a man called Leon Theremin. And this is my theremin here. It's not a 1920s one, but it's based upon that. And I've used some early 1930s materials to house the theremin in. It's a very unusual instrument.
So who else makes up Brillo?
Brillo, first of all, I would say the drummer is Ian Beano Gilpin. Now, Beano has been in every band that I've been in. I got him in my band when he was 14 years old, and he's been with us ever since, and so it's over 27 years now. There's Brian Franks on bass guitar, and the guitar player is Bruce Rowlands.
Are you a full-time musician, or does the New Zealand music industry not really allow for that?
It is possible to make a living being a musician in New Zealand. I've chosen not to. I have a real job, a day job, but it is possible to do it. I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not. It's very difficult, but I've chosen not to become a full-time musician at this stage. Who knows? In the future, things may change, but I'm a bit too old to be a pop star these days.
You have been performing in arts festivals around the country since 1999. What's the secret to keeping the band together for so long?
We all have the same passion and the drive to perform original music, and it's very important to get a bunch of guys who are as passionate about it as you are, and I'm fortunate enough to have those guys with me in Brillo.
If you know of any talented and successful musicians in our regions that you think should appear on our show, email us and let us know. That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have news including your own video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. I will be back tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.